Hi everyone, welcome back to our Go From Scratch series. Today we're going to look at arrays, slices, and maps. 3 ways that we can group data in Go. Let's jump in. Let's start with arrays. I'm going to create a new file called arrays.go. And here we'll start off with the regular starting code, so package main. We're going to import the format package because we'll need that to print out the variables. And then we'll use our func main function to write our code. Arrays are fixed length collections of variables. So for an array, you need to define how big it is right from the start. You can't grow it, you can't add extra things to it, you can't cut it down. Once you say, I'm creating this array, this is how big it is, it stays like that forever. So let's take a look at the syntax to do that. So var, let's just call this numbers, and we use a syntax that we're probably familiar with. So if you've seen the other videos, you would have seen when we created a slice. Actually, I think we used names in the last one. So we used names, and that was a slice of strings. So what you do is you use these square brackets here to say this is a slice, and then a slice of type strings. So let's do that with the array. So the big difference with the array is you initialize it with a value. Now, just to make it a little bit clearer, I do want to change this from a string to an integer. So let's just call this numbers instead, and we'll give it type int. So these are going to take integer numbers. And the reason why is because I want to print it out now and show you what it looks like. So print line numbers, that's saved, and then go run arrays.go. So we've created our array, we've called it numbers, and we've said it's 8. The size of it is 8. So there are 8 spaces here where we can store values. As you can see, when we initialize it to start with, everything is initialized as 0. So for an integer, it's initialized 8 zeros here. If we were to do the string example before, these would just be empty strings, so we wouldn't really see much. This kind of highlights it a bit better. Now we can add values in there. So if we want to add something, we just use the index. So numbers, let's say in index 3, and we'll just put the value 808. So I'll save that. Actually, sorry, we need to make sure that we actually print that out as well. So format, print line, numbers, and then here when we run it, you can see it initialized as 0, and then in index 3, so remember we're counting from 0, so 0 1 2 3, we put 808 in there. So that's how we add a variable to that index of the array. So all simple enough. A big limitation with arrays is you can't change them. So once it's created, that's the size you're stuck with. This is where slices come in because they're a lot more flexible. So I've started a new file here called slices.go just so we have a clean slate to work with. So let's create our slice variable. We've done this before, so you've seen this a few times. Let's do it again. Let's use names again. So names, and let's use the colon equals here. So here we're going to use those square brackets, and this is going to be of type string. And let's initialize it with a few names here. So let's just say, I don't know, Daniel and Mary. So we've created our variable here. We need to use it in Go. We can't just have it sit there. So let's print it out and see what we get in there. So go run slices.go, and here's our slice with our 2 names in there. So we can also add some more to names. So we can do that, append. So in order to do that, we use the variable. So we say our names variable here, and then we use the equals symbol for assignment. So we say names equals, and then we use the append function. We pass in names, and then we pass in the additional name that we want to have in there. So let's just say Mike. So let's print that out again. So format, print line, names. And when we run that, you can see here's our first slice, and then here's our second one where we've appended the name Mike to that. So unlike arrays, we can change the size of this. That's totally fine for us here. We can also create slices from an array. So say we have an array that's a fixed size, and then we realize actually we only want a certain portion of it, then we can actually just slice out part of that array. So let's create a new array here just to see that in action. So we'll use our numbers example again, and let's do the same thing. We'll use the colon equals to initialize it. And here we'll have 8. We'll use our same example as before, and we can use the 3808. So let's print that out. As always, very useful to print these things out just to make sure that they are doing what you expect. So we do actually have an error here. Expected type. Yeah, so we've forgotten the type. So we need to tell Go what type of variables are going to be stored in this array. Let's run that. And here's our array. So this is also some new syntax. We haven't used this before. So when we're initializing this array, we can specify a value that we want to put into a certain index, and then Go will initialize the rest as 0. So we're saying in index 3, we want to insert 808, which is done here, 0, 1, 2, 3. However, everything else will be initialized as 0. And that's kind of cool because then we can skip certain parts. We can say in the 8th index, we want to make that 8, right? Actually, sorry, that is not going to exist because we start at 0. So we should get 8 is out of bounds, 0 to 8. So we only have up to 7. Just to demonstrate that actually, because that's a very important thing here. So let's say in index 0, we'll put the value 1. And then for 3, we'll put 808, and 7, we'll put 888. So this one should be right at the end. This one should be right at the start. So I'll just save that. I'll clear the screen and then run it again. So now here we can see index 0 is 1, index 3 is 808, and index 7 is 888. So remember, when working with arrays and with slices, we start counting at 0. So we have an array, we have a slice. Let's make a slice from this array. So we have, let's just say slice from array, and we'll use the colon equals again, and we'll use our numbers. But what we're going to do is instead of grabbing the whole thing, we're just going to get, what part should we get? We should probably just get up to the 808, and then we'll drop the rest off. So actually, let's grab 1 0 before it and 1 0 after it. So the thing we need to remember when we're slicing in Go is that the first index is inclusive and the second index is exclusive. So what that means is when we are defining where are we going to start slicing and where are we going to stop, we start with an inclusive index. So in this case, if we want to grab the 0 before and the 0 after the 808, we go 0, 1, 2. So inclusive, we start at 2. And then exclusive, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 is the exclusive one. So we should get the 0 before at index 2, 0, 1, 2, and it will stop at index 4, so 3 and 4, and then at 5, that's exclusive, so it will stop. So let's just print that out. So print line slice from array, and just double check it's working like we're expecting. So there we go. We've got the 0 before, the 0 after, and the 808. So as you can see, arrays are very inflexible. They have to be the fixed length that you give them right at the start, but we can make them more flexible by using slices. So in Golang, you'll probably use slices a lot more than you use arrays, unless you want to have some very specific application for it. Sometimes if you're very particular about how much memory to use and things like that, maybe you use an array in that situation. But for flexibility, you normally use slices in Golang. So let's take a look at the maps. The last data structure we're going to look at today, and they are a series of key value pairs. So much like a slice or an array, we've got a collection of different objects, but in this case, we're able to define the index, or the way that we look it up, with another value. So that means we can have a word to look up the different values that we have stored in there. I think this is best explained with an example. So let's create this one here. So we've got ages. So the syntax is we call it a map. So we're creating this map, and then we need to let it know what type the key is going to be. So in this case, we're going to use strings as the keys to our map. And then we have the type here. So just be careful that the type here, this value, is outside of the square brackets. So we have map. Inside the square brackets, we have the type of the key. And then outside, we have the type of the value. So that we can initialize with some variables as well. So let's just throw a couple in here. Let's make sure that we print that out so we can see what's happening as well. So format, print line, ages, and we'll run our maps. So here we go. We can see our map here. So we've got Daniel 38 and Mary 42 in our map here. So as you can see, using key value pairs can be quite powerful, because now we can have something other than the index to look things up. Like this name here is a lot more meaningful than saying Mary is at index 1. That's not really going to be practical a lot of the time. So maps give us that flexibility. So we can access this as well. So to demonstrate the power of that, let's do it with an example. So format, print line, and let's just say Mary is, and then we'll throw in the ages Mary. Whoops. So we can look that up here by using this key Mary. So let's run that. It's running kind of slow. I don't know why that is. There it goes. So Mary is 42. So you can see the power of this by being able to use keys as the lookup. So if you've used Python before, this is very similar. Well, it is the same as Python dictionaries. That's how that works. Now, in addition to that, we can also create new variables. So we could say ages, let's add in Bob here, and let's say Bob is 70. So now if let's just print all of the ages again and just clear the terminal and run that. So now we can see that Bob has been added to the map here. Another cool thing that we can do here with maps is to check to see if something exists. We can return both value and then exists, and we need to use the colon equals here. And then let's try and get ages, and I don't know, what is Steve is a name that we've used before. So we're trying to get the value here, but we also have this nice variable that we can use to check whether or not we do actually get something back here. So we can say if exists, then format, print line. So let's just say Steve is, and then the value, sorry, that should be on the outside there. Else, then format, print line, and we have no Steve. So let's try this out. So we don't have this in our map right now. So our map only consists of Daniel, Mary, and Bob. So we should get this returning as false. It does not exist. And then we print this statement here. So let's run it, and we have no Steve. Let's add him just beforehand so that we can, ages, Steve, and Steve is 50. So let's run that, and now we have Steve is 50. So this little exists variable, this exists check here, can be quite useful. So if you want to do a bit of safety and make sure that what you're trying to grab from that map does actually exist, use the exists keyword. So one other thing we can do is to remove things from a map. So let's say we want to get rid of Bob. Sorry, Bob. We can use the delete keyword here. So we use delete, we pass in the map, so our ages map, and then we just use the keyword here. So the key value here. So here, Bob, we do that. And then let's just double check to make sure that what we're doing is what we expect. And here we go. Here's our final map. And we can see that Bob has been removed. So he was there at first, and now we've essentially replaced him with Steve. So we added Steve afterwards, and we've removed Bob from this. Cool, so that's maps, that's slices, and that's arrays. I hope you found it useful. Please subscribe if you're enjoying this. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, see you in the next episode.